Hi, it's Carly McAvoy. In this video, I'm showing you how to change a percent to a fraction or back again. And this may take 2 videos because it takes a little time. This is a harder process than decimals to percentages. The easiest thing, I think, is to turn your percent into a decimal and then into a fraction. Or if you have a fraction, change it into a decimal and then into a percent. But there's other ways to do it as well. The way that I'm talking about, if you had 35% and you wanted to know what that was as a fraction, I would first change that percent into a decimal by moving the decimal point 2 places to the left and dropping the symbol. Then to change a decimal into a fraction, you take the decimal as given, you put that number on top, and the number of zeros on the bottom matches the number of decimal places. Since there's 2 decimal places, we have 2 zeros. That gives you 35 out of 100, and then you would reduce that to 7/20ths. So 35% is equivalent to a fraction of 7/20ths. You can also think of dropping the percent symbol and putting a number over 100 if you want to move from a from a percent directly to a fraction, if you don't want to use the decimal method. So this looks like this, 25.7%. If you want to go straight to a fraction, you just drop the symbol and put that over 100. Then, because you can't leave a decimal inside a fraction, you have to multiply both the top and the bottom by 10. That's going to move the decimal point over 1 and give you 257, and move the decimal point over 1, giving you 1,000. So we always have to make sure we get rid of decimals if we do use that method. So to change a fraction to a percent, you can multiply by 100 and then add the percentage symbol. Or you could go ahead and put it into a decimal first and then into a percentage. It's up to you. I'll show you both ways in the next examples. So here's a chart, and what I would suggest to you is that you freeze the video and you see if you can fill in all the missing pieces of this chart. I'm going to work through them. I've got them worked out below, but I'm going to work through them and show you how I would get there. So for the first one, for 1/5, I would change that into a decimal, and then I would change the decimal into a percent. So 1/5, to change to a decimal, you just take the numerator and divide by the denominator. 1 divided by 5 gives you 0.2 or 0.20. And then you're going to take that decimal point and move it 2 places to the right to get your percent. So the decimal equivalent here is 0.20, and the percent equivalent is 20%. That's nice when you have a fraction and just working left to right. For the next one, 0.85, it doesn't matter which one you do first, but I'm going to do the fraction first and then the percent. To go from a decimal to a fraction, you see how many decimal places you have, which we have 2. That means I take my decimal number 85 and I put it over 2 zeros, or 100. 85 over 100, then I would reduce. You can use your calculator to reduce and ask your instructor how to do that if you don't know how to use your calculator. Or look it up on YouTube. Reduce that to 17 over 20. All I did to reduce that was to divide both the top and the bottom by 5 to reduce that. So our answer here for the chart here is 17/20ths. And then as a percent, well, that one's pretty easy. All you do is you move the decimal point 2 places to the right and you add the percent symbol, and we would get 85%. Now for the percent, I would work backwards. So I would move my decimal point 2 places to the left and drop the symbol. That's going to give me 0.126. And I don't have to put the 0 in front, but I could. And now to change that into a fraction, I'm going to take that 126 and put it on top. Notice I have 3 decimal places, so I'm going to put 3 zeros under it, or 1,000. And then I divide both top and bottom by, that's probably not 50, that's probably 500. I think I left a 0 off there, to get 63 over 500. And that would be what that is as a fraction. So as a decimal, as a fraction, and as a percent. Now, when you have something like 2/3, this is trickier, because 2/3, as you recall, if you divided 2 by 3, you get a repeating decimal. In fact, I can tell you what that is right now. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. Don't want to get rid of that. I want to put it in here. Right now, I can tell you that if I take 2 and divide by 3, I get 0.6666666 forever. I can round that wherever I want. Let's say I want to round it to the 3rd place. What I need to know is the 4th place is a 6. That means that my final number when I have a repeating 6 is going to be 7 if I round it. But now if I round that, I'm not going to get the exact percent. And I want to get an exact percent. So instead of using the decimal as the transition number, like I have been doing, I'm going to go directly from a fraction to a percent by using this method here. I'm going to multiply by 100 and then add the symbol. So I've got that worked out down below. You can see I had 0.666 and I could round that at some point. My last number is a 7. Okay, so to changing that into a percent, I'm going to take 2/3 times 100, which is 100 over 1, which gives me 200 over 3. Now that's an improper fraction that I can change into a mixed number. 3 goes into 266 times with 2 left over, and that gives me 66 and 2/3% for 2/3 of a fraction. So remember, you can't use the rounded version and get the exact percent. That's why I would use this method of multiplying by 100 and then adding the symbol. For a decimal number here, for a percent, excuse me, I'm going to move this 2 places to the right and get 0.04%. For the fraction, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. So if I look down here, I'm going to put 4 zeros under that 4. And then I'm going to reduce it to lowest terms. I divided both the top and the bottom by 4 there, and I got 1 over 2,500. So remember, always reducing to lowest terms for that. Now, when I have something like this, which is my last example here, 12 and 3/8. Well, when I have 12 and 3/8 and I say turn that into a decimal number, some people just divide 3 by 8 and then they think they're done. Well, if you do that, if you change 3/8 into a decimal, you get 12.375, but that's still a percent. You haven't changed it into a percent. You've just changed the fraction into a decimal. Excuse me, you haven't changed it to a decimal. You've just changed the fractional part into a decimal. We still have to do what we do, and that is move the percent, drop the percent symbol, and move the decimal 2 places to the left. 0.12375 is the decimal equivalent. Then take that whole thing, those 5 numbers, and put it on the top and put 5 zeros down below, and then divide until you've reduced that completely. I reduced this by dividing by 25 and then realized I could still divide by 5 again, and that's how I ended up with 99 over 800. All right, have a fantastic day, and we'll see you next time.